It was a Tuesday morning in early spring when the world outside still held a soft chill, and the smell of damp earth lingered in the air. I had just settled into my worn armchair by the window, sipping tea and watching the neighborhood slowly stir awake. At 68, mornings like these had become a quiet comfort, a routine that tethered me to something stable. I lived alone now. My husband passed away 6 years ago, and though the silence had once felt suffocating, I'd grown used to it. Or at least I thought I had. That morning, I was flipping through a photo album, a ritual I occasionally indulged in when I missed the sound of familiar voices. My daughter, Claire, had sent it to me last Christmas, a collection of old snapshots I hadn't seen in years. Our first beach trip. My husband in his ridiculous sun hat. Claire at 7, covered in chocolate cake. Each picture was a tiny anchor to a time that had slipped far behind me. A sudden knock at the door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hesitated for a moment, wrapped my cardigan tighter, slid into my house slippers, and walked over. Through the peephole, I saw a young woman, early 30s maybe, blonde hair pulled into a low bun, holding a folder. Her eyes scanned the porch anxiously. I opened the door just enough to peek through. Yes. Hi, ma'am. I'm sorry to bother you. My name's Emily. I'm with the local library program, Voices of the Past. We collect oral histories from longtime residents. Your name came up. She smiled, hopeful but respectful. I blinked. Me? I don't usually do things like this, I said cautiously. I understand. It's just a few questions. But if it's a bad time. I looked at her again. There was no pressure in her tone, just a quiet persistence. I opened the door wider. Well, come in. The kettle's still warm. We sat at the kitchen table. I poured her a cup of tea while she explained the project. They were documenting stories from women over 65, hoping to preserve personal histories for future generations. It sounded noble, if a bit intrusive. Still, something about Emily reminded me of Claire. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear. The softness in her voice. She asked gentle questions. What was your childhood like? How did you meet your husband? What do you remember most about raising a family? At first, I offered the polished versions of events, the ones I'd repeated over the years. But as we talked, I found myself peeling back layers. I told her about the way my mother used to hum while washing dishes. How my first love wasn't my husband but a boy named Peter who moved away. I confessed how scared I'd been the day Claire left for college, even though I smiled and waved bravely from the driveway. Emily listened, really listened, without interrupting or filling the silences. The hours passed unnoticed. At one point, I looked up and saw the light slanting through the window in that golden late afternoon way. I had forgotten what it felt like to be heard, not out of politeness but curiosity. When she closed her notebook, she said something that caught me off guard. You're an incredible storyteller, Mrs. Lanford. I laughed. I've just lived long enough to collect a few dusty memories. She smiled. Dusty maybe but powerful. As she left, she handed me a small card. If you remember more stories or just want to talk, here's my number. That night, the house didn't feel quite so quiet. I sat in the same chair by the window, the photo album closed on my lap, and thought about everything I hadn't said, not out of secrecy but out of habit. There were decades of memories I had never shared. Stories that had lived quietly in the folds of my mind. And now, someone had opened a door. Over the next few weeks, Emily and I met again. She would come by after work, sometimes bringing pastries from the corner bakery. We'd sit for hours talking about life, regrets, laughter, and the in-between moments no one ever writes down. One evening, I showed her the attic. Dusty boxes, yellowed letters, my husband's old record player. She lifted a photograph and smiled. This is your wedding day. Yes, I replied, my voice catching slightly. You look radiant. I laughed softly. I was terrified. But happy. Mostly terrified. It was in those moments that I realized the past doesn't have to be packed away in boxes, or buried under time. It can breathe again, through stories, through connection, through the simple act of being remembered. Weeks turned into months. Emily moved away that summer, transferred to a new project in another city, but we still talk every Sunday. And now I've started writing. Not for anyone else, but for me. For the woman I was. For the woman I became. Sometimes, all it takes is a knock at the door to remind you, you're still here. And your story still matters.